Good evening. I am calling this meeting to order. This is a Redmond City Council study session held on Tuesday, March 26, 2024, commencing at 7:00 p.m. Council members in attendance are Councilmember Anderson, Councilmember Nueva Camina, Councilmember Stewart, and Councilmember Salahuddin. And online, we have Council President Kritzer and Councilmember Fields. There are 4 items on the agenda tonight: Economic Development Plan, Draft Vision Goals and Strategies, Redmond 2050, Planning Commission Recommendation for Transportation Element and Regulations, Climate Resiliency and Sustainability and Vegetation Management Plan Update, and Council Talk Time. Our first item on the agenda is the Economic Development Plan, Draft Vision Goals and Strategies. And I think Deputy Director Seraphy Allen will be introducing this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. The title of tonight's study session, as the Mayor shared, is the Economic Development Strategic Plan, Draft Vision, Goals, and Strategies. Council approved a consultant contract with Community Attributes, Inc. on July 18th, and since that time, we have been working to collect quantitative and qualitative data to help shape the information that is presented tonight. Staff was last in front of the City Council in late November 2023 to present a data summary and confirm the focus areas that you will see detailed out with the strategies tonight. We are looking for Council feedback on the strategies and to help shape and prioritize the action development and implementation plan that will come at a later point. I will now turn it over to Philly Marsh, our Economic Development Manager, who will kick off our presentation. Philly?
Thank you, Deputy Director Allen. We are thrilled to be back here tonight for the second time with Madalena Kalin from Community Attributes. As a reminder, Community Attributes, Inc. is a premier economic development consulting firm with over 20 years of experience in strategic data storytelling and action plan development. The agenda for tonight's study session includes where we are in the process, a brief review of some of the most interesting key data findings that shape the strategies you will see tonight, and as a reminder, Attachment A takes a more detailed look at all of the qualitative and quantitative data we gathered. We'll take a look at the plan framework and draft vision. And then in addition to the focus areas, we have also identified the foundational strategies for economic development. These are citywide initiatives that support the vision and are essential for economic growth and vitality. And then lastly, we'll go over the goals and strategies we have developed for each of the focus areas confirmed by Council in November of 2023. After the presentation, we ask for discussion and feedback from Council on the draft vision goals and strategies, and this will help shape and prioritize the action development and implementation plan. We're curious to hear what you are most interested in and want to prioritize for program development. Through the action development, staff will meet with numerous internal and external partners to discuss these specific actions in relation to their body of work to ensure alignment and implementation. In addition to our previous stakeholder engagement, we also have a Let's Engage page that's currently live where the public can learn about the plan and provide feedback. I also want to draw attention to Attachment C in your packet. This attachment is an aggregate of all the comments heard by Council from the beginning of this process back in May of 2023, organized by topic theme. I hope you will see the topic interests embedded in the strategies you will hear tonight, and we will continue to reference your comments with our action development. And with that, I'll turn it over to Madalena for the presentation.
Thank you, Philly, and good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm excited to be here and to show our progress towards the plan. I'm a senior economist with Community Attributes, and our company has been supporting the city of Redmond to develop their first economic development strategic plan. So tonight we'll start with a refresher on the process, on the planning process that we've been going through. We'll dive into some of the key findings from the data analysis. Some of this you've seen at a previous presentation and when we were here last. Then we'll take a look at the plan framework just to provide an understanding of the main elements of the economic development strategic plan and defining some of the terms that we're using for some of these elements. And then we'll take a look at these elements in more detail, starting out with the economic development vision for Redmond, the foundational strategies, and the goals and strategies for the plan. So this illustrates the three steps that we have taken, and we're still in the process of finalizing this, but we started out with an assessment of the baseline, so asking where are we now. As part of that, we've done a review of the existing and ongoing studies, making sure that we're leveraging existing work. We looked at studies and plans, engagement for Vision 2050, and this has helped us provide some background on the economic development environment and then opportunities in Redmond. And we summarized these around the focus areas for the strategic plan. Then we conducted some data analysis looking at the major economic and demographic characteristics of Redmond, just to understand where Redmond is in 2023 and how it got here. We also conducted stakeholder engagement to hear from the community what their aspirations and vision is for Redmond, and to understand some of the issues that we would address with the plan. We conducted an online business survey available in 6 languages, 4 interviews with major employers, and 1 interview with 1 Redmond staff, 6 focus groups with businesses and organizations involved in retail and restaurant, creative economy, tech and interactive media, life sciences, space, aerospace, and the manufacturing sectors. Lastly, this all came together in a SWOT analysis that makes the transition towards the second phase of this process. So step 2 is developing vision and goals. So where do we go from here? We drafted the vision. We looked at the focus areas that emerged from the analysis and the stakeholder engagement, and build goals around those, which are defining what we want to achieve with this plan, and then drafted strategies and actions. We are testing this with stakeholders as well. The draft strategies and actions have been published on the Let's Engage webpage for public feedback. And as part of this process, I should mention that we met with a team of cross-departmental city staff to get their insight and feedback on all the deliverables and the strategies that were prepared as part of this. And then lastly, how do we get there? So the actions are the last part that we're working on developing currently, and then implementation, thinking about staff resources, timeline, what's needed to get things done, who are the leads on some of these actions, and who are the partners, and then again testing this with stakeholders. So some of the data analysis findings that provide the foundation for some of the strategies and actions, we looked at information across population, economy, and the real estate space in Redmond. So Redmond population is growing, and Redmond benefits from a highly diverse, highly educated young population, which has been growing fast and is expected to continue to grow faster than the region through 2050. Redmond had the highest share of residents with a bachelor's degree or higher among benchmark communities. So we've our analysis has looked at 5 other cities which have similar economic and demographic characteristics to Redmond and are located within the east side and out of state, to provide more context and to be able to get a perspective of where Redmond is in comparison to other jurisdictions with similar characteristics. Redmond also, compared to regional benchmark cities, so For commuting, we've looked at East Side communities. It has the lowest share of residents working outside the city. So the graph here is showing the percentage of residents working outside the city at 68% compared to much lower than most other jurisdictions on the East Side. Lastly, average commute times for residents are shorter than other East Side cities at 25 minutes. This suggests that residents are commuting to workplaces which are not very far from the city, located within the region. In terms of industry and employment, Redmond has a total of around 3,800 businesses, and 2/3 of those had 4 or less employees. So a big part of Redmond's economy are small businesses. Redmond has employment has seen strong growth in the past 10 years, mostly driven by the ICT and interactive media sector. Redmond employment grew by more than 21,000 jobs over the past decade, and roughly 76% of that growth was in the tech sector. Over the same period, the manufacturing and retail sectors lost jobs, with manufacturing having the highest loss of jobs, over 1,000 jobs lost during this time period. The graph here shows the concentration of some of Redmond's industries compared to U.S. And not surprisingly, ICT and interactive media is the bubble there that stands out, showing that that industry is 11 times more concentrated in Redmond compared to the U.S., so quite a strong dominance on the tech sector. Life sciences is the only other sector that has a high concentration in Redmond, and there's opportunities for growth in other industries such as retail, creative economy, clean energy, and tourism, which are all less concentrated in Redmond than in the region. In terms of retail sales, so we've focused in on retail, hearing some concerns from stakeholders, and also looking at the real estate data on retail, which is showing a limited inventory and also a quite a low vacancy rate at 1%. We conducted some analysis looking at retail sales in Redmond. Retail sales in Redmond have increased at a slower pace than King County, at 1.2% per year compared to 2.2% in King County. And as I've mentioned, Redmond has a fairly low retail vacancy rate. Only Bothell and Bellevue had lower retail vacancy rates in recent years among the benchmark communities. And the retail square feet per capita declined by 31%. The chart on the slide is showing the concentration of different subsectors of retail within Redmond compared to King County. So we're seeing that furniture, electronics, and appliances are quite concentrated in Redmond compared to King County. And on the other end, there's opportunities for auto sales and clothing, jewelry, as well as health and personal care, and food beverage, which are below. So there's retail leakage in those sectors, and they're less concentrated in Redmond than in King County. In terms of the plan framework, so this diagram shows how the elements of the plan are coming together. So the plan is structured around an overarching economic development vision, which is aspirational and describes what city staff and stakeholders in this planning process desire for the economic future of Redmond. Supporting that vision are 6 focus areas, which are listed in those blue squares, each with its own goal. That goal establishes the desired outcomes for the plan. The foundational strategies are a lens for the city's longer-term ongoing activities that lay the foundation for equitable economic development. These ongoing initiatives are essential to economic growth and vitality and a high quality of life in Redmond. So the economic development vision shown on this slide reflects the values and priorities for economic development in the city of Redmond for the next 5 years. It provides a signpost to guide goals and strategies and should act as a reference point when making future decisions about prioritizing investment and development programs. This vision is aligned with the Redmond 2050 economic vitality element goals for a sustainable and resilient economy, a high quality of life, and a diverse workforce and business community. And it highlights several desired outcomes for Bellevue, including for Redmond's. I'm going to highlight here some of the words that are emerging without reading it all out loud, but diverse, resilient, and growing economy, as well as a welcoming and positive business climate with a highly educated, skilled, and international workforce, and a desirable destination for people to work, live, and visit. In terms of the foundational strategies, so foundational strategies that we've identified are listed on this slide. As I've mentioned, there are citywide initiatives that support the city's vision for economic development and are essential for economic growth and vitality and a high quality of life in Redmond. The economic development program should support these efforts to strengthen the city's economic development environment. And these strategies are typically the responsibility of multiple departments. So the foundational strategies are centered around leveraging partnerships for achieving aligned outcomes, leveraging citywide business engagement for building relationships and storytelling, supporting city efforts that foster equitable economic security and mobility, ensuring enough space for growth and expansion of businesses, encouraging multimodal transportation infrastructure improvements, monitoring and supporting policies that contribute to housing affordability and workforce housing supply, supporting investment in quality of life amenities, and embedding the city's sustainability goals within the strategies and actions of this plan. Moving into the focus areas. So these focus areas were identified in collaboration with the City of Redmond staff, and they were validated through research, analysis, and stakeholder engagement. They are broad thematic groupings that are organizing the strategies and actions in the plan, and each of them has a goal that establishes the desired outcome for each focus areas. Moving into each of these focus areas, so business retention and expansion is our first focus area for the plan, and this slide is showing the goal in the box on the left, and then the strategies, the economic development strategies. These are the individual coherent approaches to achieving the plan's goals. They have a short to medium term implementation timeline and are primarily led by the city's economic development division in collaboration with other departments and external partners. The plan also contains actions, which are tactical or place-based, and they're providing those specific interventions, recommendations, or guidance on how to implement these strategies. So for this focus area, business retention and expansion, The focus is to build on existing assets in order to support the health, growth, and expansion of existing businesses. There are strategies around connecting with existing businesses to understand and respond to their needs and ensure their growing success. Also, strategies are looking to address some of the issues that we've identified through analysis and engagement, like displacement risk and the need for more affordable commercial space, limited industrial inventory, and the lack of retail space. The second focus area, equitable small business and entrepreneurship support. As I've mentioned in the data analysis findings, the small businesses are the lifeblood of Redmond's community, and they make up a high percentage of the number of businesses in Redmond, and they employ around 18% of workers. So a focus area that supports small businesses to start, stay, grow, and adapt and flourish by working in partnership with technical assistant partners and trusted messengers, and helping them with their unique needs and helping them succeed. So the strategies in this focus area respond to some of the issues that we've heard from small businesses, including space for future expansions, ensuring more opportunities for networking, helping supply unaffordable commercial rents, issues with unaffordable commercial rents, and addressing cultural and linguistic barriers, providing support for home-based businesses, and providing those flexible spaces like co-working, maker spaces, commercial kitchens to help start up businesses and to respond to the entrepreneurial space needs in Redmond. The third focus area, cluster diversification and expansion, is aimed at supporting Redmond's highest employing and highest growth clusters, while also encouraging diversification by attracting new or expanded companies in underrepresented industries to support resilience and increase tax revenue. So, as we've seen with the data, there's a high dependency on the tech cluster. However, that is a strong and important pillar of Redmond's economy. So there are strategies in here to support, as I've mentioned, those existing assets, but also to complement those industries with by taking advantage of those supply chain connections, as well as those synergistic relationships between small businesses and bigger businesses, and the agglomeration effect of having manufacturing as well as clean technology and life sciences. So the industries that we're featuring here, commercial space and aerospace, life sciences and clean tech, retail, creative economy, and tourism assets all have growth potential in Redmond. Focus area 4 is around business attraction and recruitment. So this focus area supports the part of just going back to the vision, creating a welcoming and positive business climate, and continuing to promote the attractiveness of doing business in Redmond. So this focus area has strategies around reducing the cost and time of doing business, targeting recruitment of businesses that strengthen the city's commercial, cultural, and district identities, and encouraging those infrastructure investments, zoning, and development that helps with business attraction. Focus area 5, workforce development. So Redmond already benefits from a highly educated, highly skilled. However, our research, our analysis, and stakeholder engagement has surfaced some further needs for workforce development in Redmond to support also cluster diversification efforts that we've spoken to. So strategies address issues identified through research and engagement, and those include skill gaps in several occupation fields, fewer qualified workers with relevant degrees than there are job positions across most industries, the need to align with the needs of underserved communities, and prioritize income self-sufficiency for workers at a range of skills and education levels, and as I mentioned, supporting cluster diversification and expansion workforce needs. So this focus area, the strategies in focus area 5, aim to ensure that workforce development efforts are coordinated, data-driven, and centered on equity and inclusion.
If I might, we're going to need to take a 10-minute recess for sunset for Ramadan, if you wouldn't mind. And so we, let's call it 7:20, it's 7:28 right now. Let's come back in let's say 12 minutes so we can make it even, so 7:40. With that, we are in recess. And we are back from recess. Please continue.
Thank you. So the last focus area that I was going to speak to for the economic development plan is district development and placemaking. The strategies within this focus area are around helping foster district-based branding and placemaking activities, leveraging the potential of new light rail stations, and enhancing the city's unique sense of place, as well as planning for the economic success and sustainability of Redmond's regional growth centers, and ensuring livability in Redmond centers and neighborhoods. I think that this area is important because we've heard from stakeholders that there is a need to make sure that change and development that's happening within areas of Redmond, especially with the arrival of light rail, is planned to both leverage the opportunities as well as address any challenges. So with that, I think we can open it up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there questions from the council?
The one other thing I'd like to add too is that in your packet, we included responses to the questions from the committee meeting, some of which have been included into this presentation from the strategies, some of which will be incorporated more into actions. So just wanted to share that as well.
And just as a reminder, I hope you see tonight there's a lot of important and exciting work ahead. And as we continue with the next iteration of action development, we really are looking for your feedback and insight on what can help shape that action and prioritize the implementation plan moving forward.
Great. Thank you so much. Councilmember Fields.
Thank you, Mayor. If I was there, I would probably just be applauding right now. I think this is a really outstanding work. I really appreciated the balance that you have built into this strategy and about people versus places, and your emphasis on people and nurturing this idea of a community and the future community, but understanding that places, especially towards the end of the conversation, how important that is to actually make that work. So I really, really appreciate the things you said. I have one small comment. The opening slide about who the city of Redmond is, and your focus on young people and somewhat education, et cetera, that's really important. But I also think it's important to make sure that we don't lose the confidence of people who don't necessarily fit well into that demographic, people who live here and are retired, people who don't necessarily have that mobility or upward mobility in their careers in mind. So I think the city is for everyone, and I don't believe that the plan is biased, but I think we should find a place to acknowledge that we are all kinds of people here. The last thing I would say, and maybe I'm paraphrasing Captain Picard, really, you've done great work. Now it's on the city administration and the electeds to make it so. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Salahuddin.
Thank you so much, and also thank you for accommodating by sharing that last slide right before, right after the break. But my question is a little bit tied to Councilmember Fields' question with regard to looking at Redmond's population and the demographic in the earlier slides, and we related it to, I believe it was 6 other cities in the region. And I know Redmond stands out in a few different ways. Are there any, or is this a potential, not to add more work, but a potential to look at cities that might have similar, whether that's demographics by age, ethnicity, education, even specifically the commute times, like Redmond is very different when looking at this chart on slide 4, I guess. So it would be really interesting to see what other cities are doing with regard to their totality when we're looking at these demographics. And yeah, not part of this, but I really appreciate, again, echoing Councilmember Fields, the depth that you went into.
I will mention that the cities that we've chosen have similar demographics. We haven't specifically looked at commute times, but demographics have been factored in when choosing the benchmark cities, if that helps.
I'll also just say in terms of implementation, I'm a big fan of borrowing good ideas from other destinations. So kind of now that we know who we are, really looking at who are those that are similar, what are they doing, how can we use them as case studies to inform some of our implementation moving forward as well.
Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Wow, that was a lot of information, and I am so sad that it had kicked off before I got to come on to council, and I'm also grateful that I'm here now, and this is absolutely incredible. I had seen that one of the questions on here was around small businesses, and the question that council had posed was, will micro businesses be included? As you were talking about having co-working spaces, maker spaces, community kitchens, all of that is great, and I also am intimately aware of some of the access to capital that minority-owned businesses do not have. I saw that there was a reference to small businesses being less than 4 employees, and one of the things that we saw during the Great Resignation was that there was a lot of women of color did not return back to the workplace, and a lot of speculation and then data that showed that it was because there wasn't a level of comfort there, a sense of belonging. With the not having access to capital, then these businesses are already a stage to where they're not going to grow, they're not going to be employing, and that's what we see in the data, is that these businesses owned by women of color, they can start, however, they have a difficult time scaling. So when I asked the question about micro businesses and small business, I wanted to make sure that was the scope that I was coming from when I asked the question then. When we are seeking established organizations for support of our businesses that we want to attract and bring in, or those that already exist, are they those that are going off of more a mainstream approach about, what micro businesses will micro businesses be included, and then falling back on, well, they are, without truly looking at which of them are being included, and are they being supported in such a way that is meaningful to them instead of attempting to put a cookie cutter approach, which sometimes is what business owners of color will face when going to the SBA or to their local chamber with the surrounding cities. So saying, have we considered that?
I will say this is a really great opportunity to partner, especially with the State Department of Commerce. Probably within the next 2 months, we'll see about 5 different loan products that are coming out of the state, including revenue-based loans, really addressing this challenge. There's a study that came out, I think it's titled Time, Trust, and Technology, or maybe I don't have those in the right order, but really looking into that challenge and how from a state level they can design programs and products to help with that. So again, that's where we want to be informed and align with that and make sure that that is those programs, those resources get down and are able to support our Redmond businesses. So the small business ecosystem is broad. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing. And so we really have to look at every business's unique needs and find out what is going to be best in terms of a partner, a trusted partner to help explain and deliver that. And then also what's the program or the product that's going to be best for them. So I'm really glad the state is looking at this at a more holistic fashion, and then being able to bring that down to the city level for our small micro businesses.
Great. My second question is around Councilmember Fields, thank you for bringing up making sure that we are supporting a Redmond for everyone, those that don't fall into high education, that there's a place here for them as well. I did a little bit of research while we were here, and we currently have, according to Indeed, in the Redmond area, over 1,000 restaurant jobs that are available right now. Inside of that, that's 1,000 jobs that we're asking people to come in right now because of our housing situation, primarily. And has there been conversation yet, and this is where my newness as a council member comes in, has there been conversations yet around increasing minimum wage and how that plays into economic development for our city?
That's a great question. Not that I am aware of as a part of this discussion, but we can put that down as a theme that we can explore and follow up with other staff around what that would look like or if that's been discussed in the past. Also maybe look to my director or any other council members to see if that's been discussed.
It has not been discussed on my side of things. I don't know what the council, if the council discussed it during your council retreat where you set priorities. Councilmember Stewart, I don't know if you...
Sure, not this year, and not in depth in my term. Thanks.
I want to make sure that any other council members have a question before we go do another second round. So, Councilmember Stewart?
Sure, thank you. I will be quick. I just want to echo and accelerate a couple of the comments of my colleagues. One of my favorite things about this project from the very beginning has been the comparable cities. I think that if you ask most folks, they know where Raleigh, North Carolina is. They have heard of that city before. Many folks have not heard of Redmond, Washington. Maybe perhaps the other one because it's so close to Bend, which gets, 200 and something bajillion days of sunlight every year, right? Anyway, I digress. But it's really cool to see Redmond and our comps in the same category. What I love about the focus areas and their complementing strategies is that they do integrate so well with so many of the other priorities. I think it's also very asset and strengths based. So things like we have shorter commutes in Redmond and we have lots of jobs and we have lots of jobs in small businesses. These are all things we want to retain. So as we're moving forward, we're not going forward from a place of deficit. Oh gosh, we want to be someone else. We want to continue to be who we are and build on that. And I appreciate that. I would be very eager to continue investing in these focus areas and these strategies through our budget, our partnerships, our legislative agenda. And I had only one question on the very last focus area. I wondered how you might define an eco district and where that might be located in our city.
An eco district, they also have been called 2030 or 2050 district, is basically a concept in which it can be a business retention, business attraction concept that partners with a city and basically has a collection of companies that all kind of pledge or have their company values around sustainability. So it can be place-based, but it can also just be kind of more of a branding-based opportunity. So one thing with the city of Redmond's really strong sustainability values, we really see using that as a business attraction tool, but then also moving forward as a place-making tool as well. You'll see a little bit of that come out. We're going to be coming with the tourism strategic plan a little bit later this year, and there's a lot of insights around visitation and visitation trends around sustainability that we want to explore leaning into as well.
Interesting. Thanks. I look forward to hearing more.
I'll next go to Council President Kritzer.
Yeah, thank you so much for the work on this and the presentation. I'll echo my fellow council members in saying that I think overall this is really on the right track, and really think that the articulation of Both the strategies and the focus areas are really great. Actually, this last focus area is one that I think I've brought up in a couple of our discussions of this topic leading up, of really kind of how we think about placemaking and district development throughout, our different, especially our urban centers. Or our centers that we have that we're developing around in Redmond. So very interested in this. One question just in terms of the process. So in terms of the final plan that will come out, I assume we're looking at this at kind of the higher level today to be able to say, yes, this is the framework that we're interested in. Will the plan go into, for example, on this slide, specific examples, for example, for each one of our different districts of recommendations for how to do that? Or can you share a little bit more about what you envision for the detail that will be added in the next iteration we'll see on this document?
Sure. So each of the strategies that we've seen here for the focus areas will have detailed actions that go into the specifics of how each of these strategies will be implemented. And then the plan as a full document will include all of the information that we've collected through the analysis and the stakeholder engagement, and really summarizing those key points that have informed these the framework. And then we'll also be discussing what are some of the considerations for implementation when we're thinking about staff resources and the timeline for some of these, because this is a 5-year plan, but we know that some of these things are aspirational beyond that timeline. So we will be sure to highlight emphasize what those are, and then we'll also look to talk about roles in implementation and partnerships.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And yeah, I definitely think on this one, I'll be very interested to see the detail on this last one that we actually happen to be on the slide of, on the strategy, or on kind of how that gets detailed out. And I think in particular, maybe one thing that I am curious about, or that of the detail we can add in, is around, how, as we develop out, how we do placemaking, how we think about engaging existing business owners as well as the surrounding public in developing those. I like the idea of creating district organizations to be able to do that. And I think one of the other pieces that has come up a couple times in this discussion has been around identifying, what's the mix of businesses that we want to have in kind of each neighborhood to really promote a sense of a really strong quality of life. So would be interested to have the recommendations on that as well.
Thank you. And seeing no more questions for our first round, Councilmember Fields.
Thanks. Just a quick follow-up, and based on some of the things I just heard over the past few minutes, and also maybe clarifying my my flippant comment about Star Trek Captain. One of the things I think might be helpful, and is like any good project, and I know this is not necessarily a project, but it is a strategy. It does have a vision, and it has a time horizon. One of the things that might be helpful is some of the key factors that need to happen, or how we avoid risk of failing to achieve that vision. So from a planning perspective, yes, I think the implementation of this belongs to the future, but speaking to you as the present creators of this strategy, it might be helpful if you identify those things that would send us off track or risk achieving the goals, common risks, or maybe even something specific as council members mentioned, we have a unique city here. So things that are unique to the city that we have to make sure that we overcome or prevent barriers from happening. So that's a recommendation. If you could come up with some sort of risk mitigation plan, I think it might help for the future.
Thank you. I'm seeing head nods, so I think we can work something up and see if it works for you.
Great. Thank you. Are there any more questions this evening? Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much again for this really exciting path forward. Thank you for all of your hard work on this. I really appreciate your you've done many presentations to us. Thank you so much through this plan. I'm really excited to see what next steps are. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you all.
And with that, we will switch to our next item on our agenda, Redmond 2050, Planning Commission Recommendation for Transportation Element and Regulations. And Carol Helen, Director of Planning and Community Development, will introduce this item as we make a switch of staffing.
Yep, we are going to make a staffing switch. So good evening, Mayor, council members. On March 5th, as part of the Redmond 2050 Planning and Community Development staff introduced the Planning Commission's recommendation for updates to the transportation element, the transportation element appendices, and transportation-related regulations. At your March 5th meeting, you also identified topics that you wanted to discuss further. And we returned on March 12th with our transportation consultants from Fair and Pierce, which supported the council's deep dive into transportation impact fees. At the end of that conversation, council was asked to think about direction to staff concerning evaluating higher impact fees. And so tonight we have a couple of objectives. First, we'd like to obtain council's direction on the potential for evaluating higher impact fees for transportation. And this is a two-part question. So does the majority of council support evaluation of higher impact fees? And the second piece of that question is, if so, does a majority of the council support evaluating fee rates higher than can be supported with existing data? So remember, we were recommending some increase in impact fees, and then we said there was only a certain amount that was defensible up to, and that additional information was going to be necessary in order for us to support the argument that we could go to the very highest level of impact fees. Our second objective is to obtain by council on council direction on other policy and regulatory issues that were raised on March 5th and documented in your packet this evening. So we have our issues matrix in the packet for your consideration and review. And there is no staff presentation tonight, so I will turn the meeting back to the mayor, and she can preside over our discussion.
All right. Well, I'm just here to guide the meeting, so to step in to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak. So I did write down your questions, though, to ensure. So the first question for the council is there a majority that are interested in higher transportation impact fees? And then the second part of that was, is there an interest in even higher than what the data allows? So I will open it up for a council discussion on this item. I see Councilmember Fields is raising his hand. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess that's a two-step question. What I heard was a two-part question. One was, are we interested in raising higher rates than what staff recommended? And the way I took your question, Director Helen, was, and do you understand that we can't support it, and it's I think your word's indefensible, and are you going to take? All right, I'm not going to get flippant, but it feels like basically you're saying, do you want to raise rates? That would be not a very smart thing to do. So am I misunderstanding the question here?
No, based on our, I think you are misunderstanding the question. So maybe we could bring up the slide that had the three rate scenarios. That might be helpful.
I think that would be helpful. And,
Yeah, so, absolutely. So the rate scenarios described current, it described a potential increase that we were able to adjust based on inputs that we have available to us, and then there was a third rate that was the highest, which we said we would need more information in order to make that rate something that we could impose. So the assumed TFP is up on the screen right now, impact fee per person trip. The maximum with the existing data was that middle tranche in green. If you can see that, I hope you can see that, Councilmember Fields. And then the maximum additional impact fee that we could support was the highest, but there would be additional data needs before we would feel comfortable imposing that fee.
So one more question, then I'm going to give an answer. Defensible to who? You said the higher rates are not defensible. Defensible to who?
So this is Jeff Churchill. I think it's multiple. It's defensible to us as staff that we believe it meets the provisions of the RCW, defensible to you, and defensible to the people that are going to have to pay it.
Okay. So I'm in favor of the higher rates. We have a very aggressive vision in this city, and we're trying to make a city that actually gets better non-vehicle transportation system in place, and that unfortunately is going to cost money. And I think now is our best opportunity to make a healthy step towards achieving that vision. If we try to run under-resourced, we're going to end up with an under-visioned vision. So I'm in favor of higher rates. I don't want to approach beyond defensible. Not quite. Again, I heard your answer, Mr. Churchill. I'm not sure I understand that, but I am in favor of higher rates. And as we talked about prior, potential adjustment of some of the exemptions. I think I try to be careful about exemptions. I think that they're important, but I also think that we end up losing important revenue and don't necessarily get the results we want by providing too aggressively on exemptions. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the best I can.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Fields. That is actually quite helpful. And defensible meaning the state law in RCW 8202 actually defines the city's authority in collecting impact fees. And one of the things that we have to be cautious about, and where defensibility comes in when making that calculation, is that we are not permitted with impact fees to address pre-existing conditions. So as a result, we need to understand what the existing condition is, understand the impact of development on those conditions, and make sure that impact fees that are imposed have a nexus and rough proportionality to the growth that is anticipated. So that's where the work comes in that Fair and Peers helped us with. And the middle maximum with existing data is what we understand and feel comfortable with imposing. There are additional pieces of information that we will be gathering, for instance, through the work that Public Works is doing on pavement condition assessments and our sidewalk assessments that will allow us to understand our ability to potentially increase impact fees defensibly in the future. But I also just need to mention that balancing impact fees is also an important objective for achieving some of your other goals. So for instance, the exemptions that were proposed with respect to daycares and with respect to affordable housing achieve other council goals. So it is a balancing act that we want to make sure we understand your policy position as we move forward with our recommendations.
And I agree with you that it's a balancing act, and I think that's what I'm trying to speak to is what is, sure, we want to achieve those goals. What is the right motivation and incentive to do that without being unfair to other people who pay? And I certainly don't want to break any laws. But I maintain the answer that I gave you. I would like to see a perspective that says we need this revenue to achieve not just the quantity of people, but the quality of the changes and the that we expect to provide in amenities because of the growth. Because as we grow, we're going to business as usual or status quo solutions are not going to work. And it might be that these new solutions and these more innovative approaches to mobility will take more money. So thank you.
Thank you. I have Council President Kritzer and then Councilmember Anderson.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I'm also favoring moving to the higher impact fee, at least the middle area. And my understanding from our conversation last week was if we gave you some direction of interest in the additional data option would be that would be a conversation sometime next year as after the data has been gathered. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I guess I would say, as you're doing research and more data comes to light, I would be interested in being able to look at that. And for now, being able to move to potentially higher fees. Also, with the proposed exemptions included, since I do think, as you mentioned, Director Helen, that some of those pieces are really critical as we kind of think about the whole picture, especially on affordable housing, with some of the other regulations that we're thinking about doing, like around inclusionary zoning, having some of those exemptions around affordable units will be key, both for achieving the public benefit of getting those affordable units, but also making sure things can pencil out. So I think that makes sense, while also hopefully we can capture more funding to support greater growth that we are expecting in our region or in our city. So, I think that's where I fall on it. And curious to hear what other council members have to say on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate the opportunity to come in and chat a little bit further about this. So some of those comments that you made earlier were very helpful to clarify, but I did want to ask, I think what I heard from Mr. Fields a little differently, just to clarify, I'm a big fan of the green option, which may not be a surprise to anybody, but I'm also very interested in finding the blue option to be very compelling, and the reason because a little bit associated with what Ms. Kritzer says is that we have some opportunity for some creativity to think about how we could use some of those funds. And I understand and heard about the condition assessments that are needed to complete this work. So my question for you, two questions. One is the maximum possible rate the same as the maximum amount of our legislated authority? Does the blue represent what we can charge in Washington State?
I believe the answer to that is yes. That is the maximum that we could charge.
Great. And so the gap is we don't have readily available data for condition assessments.
Right. Yep.
Okay. And that's really helpful to understand. So my understanding from that is that there's sort of marginal work needed to get to that rate so that it helps us tell that story a little better. Very helpful. Thank you. So I do support going green, and then I also support the idea of proceeding, and hopefully we'll see a budget request for doing that condition assessment so we can align with that.
I just wanted to add that we included in the packet kind of a matrix that shared the different kind of things that we would need to do additional research on. And even some of those note that we'll need additional research to know what research we need. So just wanted to note that as well.
that tends to be part of the story. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. Councilmember Salahuddin?
Yeah, thank you so much. Just to start off with a really quick question, did you say that we would be able to get that next year then? Or what was the timeline on potentially if we do move forward with the blue option, assessing that?
Right, so there is some data that will potentially be available by the end of this year. The reality is the work that long-range planning staff and transportation planning and engineering staff are doing, complying with the comprehensive plan update requirements, are going to preclude us doing a tremendous lot more on impact fees this year, but that would be something that we would potentially be able to come back and do next year after, if there is budget, like one-time budget money available.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, that's really helpful. Then I would also just echo, I'm supportive of the green option. And also, as we're exploring what we're doing in Redmond with the comprehensive plan, I think I asked this question last time, and there's a note that says, with specific changes to Bellevue, Kirkland, Sammamish, et cetera, just keeping an eye on those as we're, approaching the end of the year so that we can see where we stack up regionally. And then it would be, really helpful as we're pursuing the potential option for the maximum with additional data.
Great. I'm going to ask the last remaining council members who haven't responded to the question, then I'll go to back to Councilmember Anderson. Councilmember Stewart?
Sure, thank you. And I apologize for missing the prior conversation. I did view your conversation. I think it's a really a good step in the right direction for council to move to, now we're calling it the green option, so which is a step forward. One question I had or I didn't catch the answer to is that what's the guarantee on the 447 million? Is that our best guess? Because again, this is based on data that we don't yet have. So is that's an approximation and not a guarantee, is that correct?
The 447 million is based on an impact fee rate of 11,387. It can't go higher than that. So it's really the maximum. It also is, all of these assume a certain rate of growth, right? So that's our big assumption in all of them, in the yellow, green, and the blue. So it's a forecast, but there is certainly some uncertainty in there.
Sure, and maybe another way to state the question would be, we don't have the data yet that supports that rate of 11,000 and change.
Correct.
And if we sought out the data may or may not demonstrate that is a viable option.
We know that there is data that we have not collected that would add a significant amount of value to the system. I'm not going to sit here and guarantee that we're going to get 11,387, but we believe there's a lot of value that hasn't been counted yet that would get us there or close to there.
Right. So for me, I'm in favor of taking that step forward and moving to that rate of 8,200 today. And being supportive of the continued look at the data, and would very much support a budget request to continue the study forward. And also just, I'm so eager to be on the other side. Like obviously adopting all of the work of Redmond 2050 is going to be amazing, but then for us actually to be on the other side and actually be implementing the work that we're discussing here tonight, I just feel like the conversation is going to be different in 18 months, and I really look forward to that because we'll have such a new normal. It's such a vast shift from the past and where we're headed. So thank you again for your work on this.
Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Thank you for the updates. I am also in favor of the green option. I think that's a pretty easy jump to say absolutely. I'm also in favor of the maximum possible rate in the blue area. And thank you for the work that you did in the matrix on pages 2 and 3. That kind of lets us know what we're looking at in regards to different segments of it.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Anderson, you had a follow-up.
Yep, one follow-up. So in the legislation that we come see coming forward for this? Can we please see a little bit about next steps regarding some of the conversation we've had on data collection and coming back to the intention to come back to council? And primarily, I'm really interested in making sure that we're maximizing our legislative authority or on path to do so. Thank you.
So does staff have what they need on this part of the conversation?
Yes, and I want to return to something that we said 2 weeks ago, which is that even for the green, the work that's not yet done is for the council to prioritize the projects that could be funded that can't be funded with just the yellow. And so we would need to do that prioritization work and bring you back a revised TFP proposal, which we said would be work that would be done in the summer. So you'll see us again for TFP and impact fees later this year in order to get up to the green or somewhere near the green for implementation at the end of this year.
Thank you for that. Look forward to that. And the second part is that council had questions, and there is a matrix in your packet, and I could go through each one and ask if we can close it, or I could ask if there are any items that council feels should not be closed and we needed more of a discussion on. That'd be my preference, but I also want to appreciate what the council questions are around all this. Councilmember Fields? Your hand is up?
I didn't. Yes, thank you. I think your latest question to council was, well, I don't think, I know that it was what I was going to address. I believe that a lot of the answers are provided, and I think a lot of things that that council has expressed as either positives or concerns or ideas are captured. But I don't know if you can put them in suspended animation as opposed to closing them, because I think as this discussion moves forward, and almost every council member has talked about the idea that the future is unfolding right before our very eyes here, and it's not going to be, we're going to learn a lot as staff does their work and as things move on. So I think we should revisit them and not necessarily close them. Probably some could be closed, but I think for the most efficient thing is to keep them open. And at the time, council, in future discussions, council can say, yes, this is in fact been addressed and I'm satisfied. So that's my take on that.
All right. Are there any other comments on this matrix and how you would like to proceed? Councilmember Nueva Camina?
I'm good with mine that I had in there, but as I was scrolling through, I did see that Councilmember Forsyth had several in there, and she's not here to speak on that. So I just wanted to note that.
Yeah, and yeah, we've been in conversation with her, and she'll ensure that if she has any further questions, she'll get back to us.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for thinking of her. Council President Kritzer?
Yeah, I appreciated the answers in there, and I think one of the things that I would love to, if we have a moment here, to be able to have staff elaborate on, would be on some of the discussion around the parking pieces, which there was a matrix item on in here, and just to be able to speak to some of the aspects. I think one of the questions that I had asked around was, envisioning in public, not just on the paper, for the community, why we might move to some different strategies around thinking about parking. as part of our transportation picture, and how it fits into our vision moving towards 2050. So we just love the staff to be able to share more on the record. There was some really good information shared in the matrix, but I think for the listening public, it's helpful, and would be helpful for the council, just to think about what we mean when we say we're going to move towards a couple of these new standards.
Is there, Mr. Churchill would like to summarize briefly the parking element that's on here?
So briefly, I think what this gets to is the communities and the council's priorities and objectives for the future and what we're all trying to achieve. And changes to how parking is regulated in our centers is really about being able to achieve other important policy objectives around sustainability, around affordability, and around equity. Continuing to require a certain amount of parking, especially in our centers, for every new development impedes those objectives to the point where they cannot be achieved. And that is why we are recommending in centers dramatically reducing or eliminating off-street parking requirements. With that comes the responsibility of the city to manage the public supply so that that public supply, be it on-street or off-street, is available for visitors, for people who are patronizing Redmond businesses, so that people have access to the places that they want to go in our centers. So that's the summary of the response. We have started that management, of course, in downtown, started years ago and completed a strategic plan around that. That the level of effort required for managing the on-street supply is going to increase as growth occurs in downtown, in Overlake, and Marymore.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Churchill. I appreciate it, and I just wanted to highlight, because I think we have been getting questions from the public, and we will continue to get questions around this topic, and especially if we're going to reduce parking requirements, minimum parking requirements, which does lend itself, in addition to our sustainability strategies, as we think about wanting to get more people out of single occupancy vehicles and encouraging other types of transit, as well as addressing issues like traffic. But just wanted to kind of raise that, because I do think, as we continue to do that work, I think we need to make sure that we're continuing to communicate out with the public some of the intentionality of these strategies. Obviously, it's in high visibility right now as we've been implementing our new downtown parking management plan, and have been getting some feedback on that as well. But just something to think about. And I guess for my thought as we implement some of this is to be thoughtful about how we can plan towards being able to move to different types of transportation, multimodal, and mass transportation, light rail, bus, but that we that we also need to make sure that we are that we're making that progress, because we will be making a bet on reducing the number of places for cars in our community, in the hopes that we do increase the amount of those other types of modes, or at least the amount of sharing that people are doing. So I just wanted to kind of eyes wide open highlight that I think this is a great thing for us to be able to do, but I just wanted to put it out there for the community and the council for us to be thinking about this and about how we can strategically manage and make sure that there's still there's parking within our different centers, and also that we're incentivizing alternative behavior as well.
Yes, thank you for that, Councilmember Kritzer. And you'll be likely seeing budget proposals over time that will actually address that increased demand for parking management in the city. What we see is people engage in behaviors that aren't necessarily appropriate when they get frustrated about parking. We see people parking in fire lanes at times. We will be looking at methods to address that more intentionally, as you indicated, and then also balance the needs of our small businesses and others that need to see parking turnover on a on a relatively frequent basis to provide opportunities for their customers to see them. So you will be hearing more from us on this topic.
Sorry, one last comment I'll make. Sorry, it's a little hard since I'm not in the room there. Just on this that I appreciate and that I think has just been a reflection that I think we also need to think about as we do this is just the kind of impacts on our downtown businesses. I know our staff are currently thinking about, how do we make sure that, for example, their employees have parking or have access, especially until we get enough housing where people can live near where they work, who may be working retail jobs, that we also help to support those businesses or others with the types of parking that they need for employee base as well.
Thank you for that. Are there any other comments or questions on the questions matrix answers? Great. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you, Director Hillenden team. And with that, we will move on to our next item, which is Climate Resiliency, Sustainability, and Vegetation Management Plan Update. And we'll have about a minute or so to shift people around. Got it. Dave? Hey. Mr. Tuchek?
Where would you like me to sit here?
You can wherever you would like. There's so much space now. Next up, we have
words in the title of your agenda item. You can have the whole table.
Yeah, it is a long title. I agree. Next up, we have I'll say it one more time. Climate Resiliency and Sustainability and Vegetation Management Plan Update. Director Hamilton is not feeling well this evening, and so we have Deputy Director Tuchek here this evening, who will guide us on our presentation and Q&A, and which is great because Mr. Tuchek is the one who led this project, so he is the expert here with us tonight. Are you ready for us, Dave?
You bet.
Awesome.
I believe so. I think my mic's working. Hello, council members. Yes, I'm going to be giving you an update on the Climate Resiliency and Sustainability and Vegetation Management Plan. And really, the purpose will be to give you an update on the plan, and then the agenda topics tonight, I'm going to be providing a project overview, primary goals of the plan, strategies and actions, and then also implementation, planning, and execution. So before I talk about these bullets, I wanted to say a couple of words. The City of Redmond is a leader in the areas of sustainability and resource protection. We have a long-standing commitment to protect the natural environment, reach carbon neutrality, and prepare for climate impact. So this particular plan builds on existing vegetation, sustainability, and climate-related planning efforts. And we have several of them in the city that staff have worked on and council has worked on over the past few years, such as our tree canopy strategic plan, the Environmental Sustainability Action Plan, or ESAP, our 20-year forest management plan, the climate emergency declaration, and then the climate vulnerability risk assessment. So in September 2023, the city hired Herrera Environmental Consultants to develop a climate resiliency and sustainability and vegetation management plan. So city staff, we had a core team who worked directly with the consultant to develop this plan. And really the purpose of the plan is to implement strategies and actionable items resulting in a healthy and sustainable natural environment. So we had three primary goals of the plan, and the first one is to identify and implement the actionable items and strategies resulting in the healthy and sustainable natural environment. What the consultant did, they reviewed all of the past plans that we had, did a literature review, and really focused on strategies that we could implement immediately and long-term. So the previous plans identified certain areas and strategies, but we really wanted to focus on them so that we could take action. The second item or goal would be to strengthen interdepartmental communication, alignment, and coordination. So several different work groups in the city actively manage vegetation, so public works and parks, and then also the planning department basically defining goals for tree canopy expansion and tree rules and regulations. So the goal really is to strengthen interdepartmental communication. And then lastly, identifying and prioritizing available land for future tree planting and rewilding. So as you know, we have a goal of 40% tree canopy expansion. Canopy cover, we're at about 37%, maybe a little bit more. So we spent a lot of time during this process identifying areas specifically for tree canopy expansion and then also rewilding. So the main categories, and I'll go into more detail, but I have them quickly listed here. In the following slides, we'll go into more detail. Education and outreach, then rewilding, tree canopy expansion, and then maintenance practices. So the education piece is really focused on community outreach regarding the actions of the plan. So the actions will change what people see out in the landscape in the community, and this is a really good example, this slide. This is of a naturalized meadow. You can see it's got natural grasses, native grasses in it with wildflowers. You could kind of visualize one of our parks, like maybe Idlewood Park or Farrell McWhirter Park, that have large open grass areas that are mowed pretty much on a weekly basis during the summer months. We are intending to go into some of these places and then plant naturalized meadows, such as the one that you see in this slide. Now, it's not going to be exactly like this. It might just be maybe a border meadow that goes around the open space, or it could be just like this, maybe with a pathway that goes into a mowed area in the middle of the meadow. But really creating this natural environment that more replicates nature. And then also the communication piece, we're going to be explaining to the community the benefits of rewilding and this plan. So the second main focus is rewilding, and I can explain what that actually means. The definition is the restoration of an area or land to increase biodiversity and restore its natural process. So there's a lot of different ways that you can rewild the landscape. The previous slide was of a naturalized meadow. So there's going to be places on our public lands and in our parks where we're going to get away from mowing on a weekly basis and creating these naturalized meadows. We can also do the same with roadside meadows. So when you drive around the city and along the main arterials, you're going to see regular mowing of these areas. So you can convert those areas to roadside meadows, which are basically like the naturalized meadows that I just showed, but the plant material is lower. It has longer blooming wildflowers, and then pollinator gardens. And this is a great example, this picture up on the screen, of a pollinator garden. So last summer, I took this picture in Eastern Washington in the Spokane Valley, city of Spokane Valley, and they have about 2.5 acres of pollinator garden around their public library. When I visited it, it was alive with pollinators. It was just a really beautiful landscape. So we intend to incorporate some of these pollinator gardens throughout the lands in the city. A really good example is up at Westside Park, where we have a smaller pollinator garden, but if you visit the park, you'll see what we're talking about. And then also improving our wetlands, improving our understory, which is basically the plant material, native plant material that's under the tree canopy in our forests. So you're looking at small saplings, shrubs, ground covers, things like salal, wild huckleberry, bleeding heart, those types of things. And then finally, one of the main goals of this plan was to identify climate resilient plants, because we know that the climate is changing. A lot of the native plants that we have are suffering right now, and all signs are it's going to get worse. It's going to get drier. Temperatures are going to continue to increase, definitely during the summer months. And so our consultants put together, if you had a chance to take a look at the plan, there's about 30 pages in there with lists of different plant material for all these rewilding areas. They did a very comprehensive analysis of plant material that will grow now in our current climate and then also in the future. And we intend to incorporate the new plant material in the landscape now and then also in the future. Tree canopy, this is our third major objective or actionable item. So we spent a lot of time as a team identifying these tree canopy expansion areas, and then our consultant mapped them all. So if you take a look at the plan, you'll see where it's mapped where we can expand tree canopy. We're going to prioritize those areas utilizing city funds to expand the tree canopy, and then also focusing on the climate resilient species. And then lastly, with the fourth main focus is on our maintenance practices. So I'll talk a little bit about those. So integrated pest management. If you're not aware of what that is, it's IPM. And so the definition is environmentally sensitive approach to pest management, minimizing use of environmental harming chemicals. So in our park operations group, we've embraced that philosophy for quite a few years now. So we've really reduced our use of toxic chemicals, pesticides and herbicides to control pests. And you can do that pretty easily, different methods. So for an example, for weed suppression, we use what we call a super mulch, which is about a 5-inch layer of wood chips and woody debris. But you know, a lot of people have bark around their yard, but we go really heavy on that. We have a machine, it's called the foam stream, which basically heats up plant oil, makes a really hot foam, and it's safe for the environment, and then you can apply it on a shrub bed or area where there are weeds, and it will kill the weeds. So there's a lot of different methods. And then also planting disease-resistant plant material, things that are resistant from insects, resistant from disease, then you don't have to apply chemicals. So that's integrated pest management. Like I said, we're leaders in that area. We're going to continue to improve in that area also. Leaf and woody debris utilization. So in this picture, this was up at Grasslawn Park. This was just a few weeks ago, but in the autumn, you know, those trees have a lot of leaves, and it takes a lot of work to haul those off the property, and eventually it goes to a compost facility. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be utilizing more of those leaves on site, trying to keep them in the shrub beds, around the tree wells. And actually, if you have like a grove of trees, you can actually create a leaf island around that. So rather than having manicured lawn underneath it, you create this mulch layer. It's healthier for the trees, healthier for the soil, healthier for the environment. So we're really changing our maintenance practices. So people will be seeing that in our park system and in our publicly maintained properties. And then lastly, electrifying our maintenance equipment. So Again, this was taken 3 weeks ago. We were doing demonstrations. We had a vendor out demoing the electric equipment. We've been doing this now for probably the past 2 months, every 2 to 3 weeks, trying out new equipment. The staff originally were hesitant. They didn't know if it was going to have enough power. They didn't know how long it was going to take to charge it. Now, some of this equipment, they love it. It's quiet, it's very powerful, charges overnight. So expect to see more of that in the park system. So then lastly, I just want to talk about the implementation and action. So defining accountability and roles. Through this process, we've had a core team in Public Works, Parks, Planning, TIS was involved. We're going to carry that team now after we have the plan to implement these actions. We just can't, I mean, that's the next step. And then we want it to be collaborative across the entire city. And then that kind of aligns with communication. So communication within the different work groups in the city that manage vegetation, and then also continue communication with the community. So we'll have a dedicated web page for this project. We'll be doing social media. We'll probably have yard signs, similar like H signs in some of these pollinator gardens, naturalized meadows. Funding. It will cost money to do this. Fortunately, a lot of these actions we'll be able to do out of our existing operating budget. We might have to have some one-time money for maybe some of this electrified equipment or wildflower seed. I don't know if you've priced it out lately, but it's pretty expensive. So we'll be looking for some funding with that. And then a lot of these actions that I just described will reduce our budget. So we'll just have to see how it all plays out. Equity, we want to make some of these ecological improvements in areas within the city that, for an example, downtown, there's a lot of road, there's a lot of concrete, there's a lot of buildings, there's not a lot of green infrastructure. So figuring out ways to increase tree canopy and vegetation in the downtown core would be a goal of this project. And then lastly, next phase is to prioritize these actions and then execute on the plan. And that is it. So happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Well, I just want to thank you, Mr. Tuchek. This is, for me, a very exciting project. I am grateful that we worked as a team to come up with this, and the council worked with us as a team to fund it in our budget, and it's nice to see the evaluation part come to a close and share all this information, and I'm excited to I'm looking forward to where we go with it. But that was just my little commentary because I'm so excited about this. But I'd love to answer any questions that the council might have, and I will go to Councilmember Nueva Camino.
Thank you, Mr. Tuchek. I think about kind of our environment in Redmond, and there's so much diversity in what all we're trying to manage, and so many different puzzle pieces. I just imagine how much fun and how exciting that it can be in some of the problem solving that we get to do. One of the things that I was reading in the packet was around our riverbeds, and it's very much in flux given climate change. And we're seeing, of course, an increase of trees coming down because of our friendly neighbors, the beaver. And we're seeing, that it's seeming to be more frequent. So several residents have reached out asking, is this, are we seeing an actual increase, or does it just seem like we're seeing an actual increase? So wanting to know then if that is posing any threat to the riverbeds, to the banks of the rivers.
Great question. And I will be talking to a couple of other people who have more expertise in the city regarding that, but I do agree. I know that when we do plant smaller trees, we'll actually put wire cages around the trees to protect them from the beaver. Now, that being said, if you go up the Sammamish River and just walk the trail, you'll see some very large trees that it's amazing how big of trees the beaver will damage and then drop. So has it increased? I'm not sure, but I can definitely find out. I'll talk to some of our natural resource staff and see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fields.
Thank you, Mayor. So we talked about this briefly before, and you mentioned it right at the tail end of your presentation about equity, and then you highlighted downtown. And, my memory of the history of Redmond, this idea of maintaining a healthy vegetation in our urban centers has a long history here. There was a ton of protests in Overlake with the group health site and cutting down all the trees, and there were, and that sort of lingers on about allergies and other types of things that respiratory problems, I should say, rather than allergies. But and to use your words, our goal is to try to figure it out. That's great, but I think it should be a priority as the problem becomes more obvious and more manifest. And I'm going to do a bad job of channeling Councilmember Forsyth here, who always brings up the idea of roof vegetation. And is there anything in the potential of a plan working with partners who actually own those buildings to create at least some level of solution around roofs on top of our buildings? And then in addition to that, what kinds of things, what is sort of surfacing on the horizon here of what can we do with our urban centers? Because I think this is not a problem we can ignore. I've mentioned this many times, especially in the summer when I ride my bicycle or motorcycle. I feel the difference in heat on those hot days when I go through Overlake or downtown where there's nothing but cement. So it's a real problem, and it's going to become a much, much bigger problem. So I know that's a lot, but if anything you can say would be helpful.
Thank you, Councilmember, for that question. That's that area that you're talking about is being handled in a different area. This is just in particular about city-managed properties and how we're changing our ways of managing them, managing the vegetation. There are many different spaces in our city that we manage vegetation in many different ways, and this was an opportunity to just take a hard look at that and change those practices in order to be more responsive to our changing climate. But I'm not trying to dismiss your questions. I just think they need to be directed toward a different department, like the planning department, as we work toward 2050. And I do know that they are very well aware of opportunities there to change how we manage our very dense urban areas with vegetation. So I will relay that question onto our planning department for some feedback for you.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you so much, Deputy Director Tuchek. Always nice to see you and spend time with you. I have two questions, one internal and one external, under the theme of communication, and I'm so glad that this was a part of your presentation tonight. I really believe that no solution can be complete until it's completely communicated. And at our council retreat, we actually spent a fair amount of time talking about the communication needed for solutions in our city. So a big piece of this work was bringing all the internal departments together to elevate, bring awareness to some of the need for better coordination, and you referenced that the team is going to continue on. I just wanted to give you a chance to say a bit more, if there is more to say, but how has the information been received by the relevant teams, and how is the work going with the various directors to move forward in coordination with that work?
Yeah, so I would say that The core team, which was, representatives of Public Works, Parks, like I said, TIS, our communications team, and planning department, were very supportive and engaged during this process. Part of the development of the plan, we had several different workshops, active workshops, that the consultant guided us through. And basically, everybody was participatory, fully supportive. I think probably the most interesting thing was there was a bit of concern about our frontline staff, the people that actually do the work, because they have been doing some of this landscape vegetation management a certain way for quite a while, right? So they're really focused on everything looking perfect and every line being straight and not a weed in the landscape. And so we've presented this project to our staff, and it's pretty amazing. They're very excited about it. They're coming into my office and the supervisor's offices, and they're bringing different types of plant lists that they want to plant in these naturalized meadows. They're doing research on wildflower seeds. They're looking. So that was probably the biggest, hurdle that we were concerned about. But in terms of support with the other work groups, everybody's on board, and yeah, it's very exciting. And looking forward to continuing this, and the implementation phase is going to be pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I really do appreciate that. And you started your presentation by referencing how Redmond is known as a city that cares so much about sustainability. And I do think that is people powered. That is number one, our residents for generations asking for that, as well as our staff who are out there making it possible every day. So I really do appreciate that. My second question, and the external facing one, I'm going to channel former council member, the late Nancy Remack, with this question. And I think you kind of referenced it before, but roadside meadows versus weeds.
Yeah.
Without communication, there is no difference, right?
Right.
And Nancy would want us to be really clear, number one.
Yes.
And she may not want the meadows, but we'll move on. So I just wanted to lift that up to say it's really hard to not tell the difference unless it's well communicated. It sounds like your team is on top of that, so thank you. We really appreciate that. And I think that one of the things that Council also kind of alluded to in our retreat is that our public can handle, the truth and the science even. We have a lot of citizen scientists who are, just look at our Adopt a Drain program, right? So I think when given the information and the ability to provide feedback and be engaged with the information, I think that makes a richer community. So thanks for your attention to that. Thank you.
Yes.
I think, and I'll go to Councilmember Salahuddin. I think you bring up some really great points about communication, and I think about some of our, during the pandemic, we had some budget challenges, and we reduced the mowing that we were doing, say, in our medians, and we got a lot of feedback on that. But part of the challenge was what's planted in the medians, if you let the grasses grow, get extremely tall and do actually impede people's vision around, I think of on 148th in particular. And so changing over some of those spaces to natural areas with that actually grow to a limited height, so that when they do naturalize, they are appropriately, it is not a distraction, and it's actually a nice and beautiful landscape to look at, and you don't feel worried that you're not going to be able to see a car turning and doing a U-turn or something like that. And so I think that's the intentionality of this. I think the other piece that I think is really important, and both Councilmember Anderson and Councilmember Nueva Camina, having interactions with Cascade Water Alliance, know this, that part of our challenge too is in the future thinking about how to reduce our water use. And one of the most greedy water users is a lovely green lawn, which we do have a lot of in our park spaces, and some will need to remain, but not all. And so we'll have an opportunity to really do our part in reducing our water consumption as we look toward the future and our climate changing and our water resource. So I'm pretty excited about a lot of the opportunities this is, and I will, I'm talking a lot about this, but it does go back to my background, but that the staff are so on board and so excited about this means that this was really the right time and the right way to go about doing these changes in philosophy about how we manage all this. It's exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and I just wanted to add, Mayor, that, and you hit on it, is and I've told staff this, and we can do this, is that we can make these improvements to the environment, but still, it can still be aesthetically pleasing to the person going by and observing it. So it's not going to look like a vacant lot that's not getting attention, right? And you can do it very easy. It's still going to require maintenance. I mean, these naturalized meadows will still probably mow once a year just to keep the invasives down. And of course, we'll be doing litter removal, things like that. But if you look at Vancouver, British Columbia, they've been doing this for a few years now, this whole naturalized meadow program. And they've got probably, I think it's about 28 of their parks are doing this, and they have a whole manual on how to do it with intentionality, so that, for an example, if you have a large meadow with a sidewalk around it, you just do a mowing strip of about 6 feet wide around the entire meadow, and then people go, okay, I get it, that's there for a purpose. They're just not letting it go. So there's lots of different ways to do it where we can accomplish improving the environment whilst it's still looking, pleasing.
Councilmember Salahuddin?
Yeah, thank you so much. This entire report was really fascinating. I appreciate the high-level overview on the presentation. Not really a specific question, but just regarding the tree canopy and our goal for 2049 to reach 40% coverage. I briefly looked at the tree canopy strategic plan, and I know a lot of the work here regarding tree canopies is also still, within the planning phase. We're looking at different areas across the city. But in terms of, prioritization across the different identified areas, is there sort of like a method that we'll be going toward across Redmond, looking at different, communities, different parts of, where we're trying to build our our hubs? Is downtown being prioritized over Southeast Redmond versus Overlake? And are we looking at, particular areas for tree canopy coverage, or will it just be, as we're reviewing our goals?
Yeah, so it's going to be both. And I know that some of the mapping has identified, there's some parts of the city, particularly on the outskirts, that have lots of tree canopy, but as you get down to the core, it's pretty void. But then the challenge is, if it's already built out, how do you improve that? So we're going to be balancing that. We're also going to be taking a look at, some of the areas that we're going to be planting trees. It's just going to be, 3, 5, 10 trees, whereas other areas, it might be a whole half acre, right? Those half acre spots, are available for tree planting. A lot of them, we're already putting trees in. We've already done that. So, on the public land, the areas are going to be smaller in need of trees. If you saw in that strategic plan, it basically mentioned that if we really want to move the bar on tree canopy expansion, we have to do it on private property, is going to be our big push. And so we're going to be taking a look at, we already are, but taking a look at how can we incentivize people to plant the trees. And so doing either lower cost trees for the public or tree giveaways or something like that. And we've talked about it internally, and not just a little sapling, but actually a substantial tree, a 1-inch caliper, 1.5, something that people are going to plant in their yard, and then they're going to water, and they're going to nurture, and they're going to let it get to full size. Because a lot of times the little seedlings that you send home, they end up on the back patio, and then they get too hot and die, and then it's over, right? So really consciously thinking about some kind of tree giveaway and really expanding the tree canopy on private property and even businesses.
Yeah, and I know that the Seattle Trees for Neighborhoods program that's listed is, I know a few people that have taken advantage of that, and I think something similar to that in Redmond would be a really cool opportunity.
Great. I see Council President Kritzer has her hand up.
Yeah, thanks so much for the great presentation and wonderful work on this. I'm excited for a lot of these changes, and glad that the staff is excited to implement it and get creative, so we can be a more climate resilient community. Just curious in terms of the implementation in some of our in some of our larger parks or kind of more notable ones. Will you be coming back as you're implementing and giving us some views of the types of strategies that are going down? So just speaking to, again, I think the earlier conversation on communication would be great to know if you could keep the council updated, as some of the more visible things are going in, just so we're aware of what the strategies are. Use this also as a platform, but just also curious a little bit of kind of how it will get rolled out, especially in some of our more significant parks.
Absolutely. We'll come back, we'll provide updates, we'll provide pictures. We're going to be implementing some of these actions pretty immediately, but it's going to be also gradual, right? So we don't want to do it all at once. And then quite honestly, as was mentioned earlier, a lot of the spaces in our parks, in our other public places, we're not going to be rewilding, right? They need to be open for active recreation and other uses. So we're going to be sprinkling it throughout our public property in the city. You will be seeing it happen, but it's not going to, and then it's, some of it's going to take a little bit of time, right? So we can do some naturalized meadows right now by just letting some of the native grasses grow taller, but doing things like the tree canopy, creating pollinator gardens, it can take, a year or two to get those established. So it's going to be a gradual process with some immediate returns. You'll be seeing this spring and this summer. But then we will be coming back and then providing reports.
That's great. And yeah, thanks for that clarification. It was a little hard to tell from some of the maps exactly where some of this was going to happen. So that's a helpful clarification.
Thank you. And Councilmember Fields?
Yeah, this question is back for you, Madam Mayor. And it's going to sound like an argument, but it's not, I guarantee you. So in my question earlier about partnering with people and to improve vegetation at urban centers, you explained that the focus here is on city-owned, the management of city-owned property. And I respect that. I understand that you have to divide the work where it's best done. But I did hear Mr. Tuchek mention in that there would be work done with private owners, and I'm assuming that it's under this program. So I'm trying to understand the difference between working with property owners not in urban centers and working with property owners in urban centers. And if it's just a matter of scale, I understand it. So, but if I could just get some clarity on that would be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, I think Mr. Tuchek was talking in particular about increasing our tree canopy citywide overall. And so that's part of a program that we have in tree management. It does overlap with this. This in particular was how do we change how we manage our park and our property systems in order to be more resilient. But I think if I can kind of follow on with where your question could go, is none of this information is solely just the work of the Parks Department and managing all of those green spaces. This information that we received, that we worked with for this study, will be used citywide, not just for all city properties, but it's an opportunity to help our community members in their own property think differently about how they use the property. And so I feel like this information has a future to improve communication with the rest of our community as well on opportunities they have as well. So yes, to what you're saying, I hear what you're saying. And so this is just a particular focus on city property, but the information absolutely can be used elsewhere throughout our whole city to improve everyone's property. Does that feel like a...
Totally understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I completely understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions on this item? Well, once again, Mr. Tuchek, thank you to you and your department and your staff. I'm really excited. Looking forward to seeing what's next.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Great. And that wraps up our presentations for this evening. The last item on our agenda is council talk time. And so I will ask council members if they have anything in particular that they'd like to share to wrap up this evening. Yes, Councilmember Stewart.
I'll defer to the council president first.
All right. Council President Kritzer?
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, I will not have my long list tonight since, as I mentioned, I'm a little under the weather. But did want to note for council members that I'll send out the next business meeting agenda, but just to note that the main voting items on that are going to include the Southeast Redmond Park Master Plan approval, as we discussed in committee today, and then board and commission member appointments. In the main staff report will be on Redmond 2050 Phase 2A final review, and that'll be a staff report followed by a study session the next meeting. And then just wanted to flag that the April 9th study session has a lot of things that we've been discussing for a while of wanting to have work on or come back to us. So the salary commission discussion will come back, as well as our discussion around potential items from the audience rules adjustments. Both of those we'll have our city attorney with us, and he doesn't usually join us for study sessions. So we put those two together since he was going to be able to support the discussion on both of those. And in particular, our new city attorney was able to work with me and Council Vice President Forsyth to capture bring some new ideas as our new city attorney, having worked on this with other cities, I guess, around some ideas of what we might think about for some bounds within our council rules on these issues. So you'll see that in the packet, some recommendations, but of course we'll look forward to getting your thoughts on that. And then also that same study session will also have discussion around law enforcement technology, and then that Redmond 2050 Phase 2A final review. So just wanted to preview the next 2 weeks as we move into April. And then I also wanted to call out, I think Councilmember Stewart did have an item, but I wanted to note that if Councilmember Salahuddin, if you wanted to share about the National League of Cities conference, would love to be able to hear any thoughts tonight, or if you wanted to wait, since I know Council Vice President Forsyth isn't with us, of course, happy to wait if you wanted to kind of do it all together. So, but I know we had originally slated for you guys to be able to present on that or share your takeaways tonight on that.
Yeah, thank you. Just to jump in, I'll wait until Councilmember Forsyth is back. I had a quick preview of just a few of the topics, which I could share after Councilmember Stewart, I believe, had her hand raised. But it was on transportation and infrastructure services. There was a first-tier suburbs meeting, and building a community-centric approach to emergency response services were just 3 of the sessions that I attended. There was a few more. I'll have to get the notes, and I'll actually send those out ahead of time so that you can review them, and then maybe in 2 weeks when Councilmember Forsyth is here, I'll connect with her so that we can share those out, and then if there are any questions, because there was also potential grant funding that we identified as well, so that's exciting. I'll give it back to you, Council President.
Thank you. And I just had one other comment, and then I will cede the floor. I wanted to note I had recognized a few spring holidays going on in my remarks at our meeting last week, and I also just wanted to say Happy Purim to everyone who celebrated this last weekend in our Jewish community. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll catch up with Councilmember Salahuddin after this, and we can chat about NLC to make sure that because we have already received some grants from NLC, so I want to make sure that you're well aware. So, and Councilmember Stewart.
Thanks. I had mostly questions, and I think the council leadership addressed some of it. I did have my prep meeting today for 2PW next week. There is about 20 minutes available. If council leadership is interested in putting in a work item, just please be in touch with me by early tomorrow. We are still working on the last part of the committee work plan to be included for next week as well. One thing I wanted to just bring back, because it came up for me in this process, is I don't know if I missed it. That's certainly a possibility, but we work on these work plans, and I saw in the last study session that council leadership requested we wrap them up this month. They are 12-month work plans that we create for the biennium. And it's a process that we've intended to come back to and fix. And I think we just need to put it back on our work list, because we are kind of using staff time right now to wrestle together what are the topics we're going to discuss this year. We will adopt them this year, and then we won't adopt new ones next year. So they just kind of run out. And so it's a process that maybe we need to just put back on the list to reevaluate the purpose and usefulness of them into the future. And I just wanted to check in on a couple of the items coming up on the April 9th study session. You know, a few of them we had a couple of shorter conversations, and if there's any work, I just hope that we can get the work done in the time allotted for them. So if there's any pre-work, I would hope that the council leadership would just be like communicative about what's needed on that. That's all. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Any other items for talk time? All right, seeing none.
Mayor Bernie.
Oh,
Mayor Bernie.
sorry, I'm sorry. Councilmember.
Sorry, I just wanted to respond to the questions.
Okay.
So yes, well, I guess I'll respond to the last one first, which is that happy to, as if we have, I think on the items from the audience, we can have Mr. Kenny send out the materials in advance to the council, just so that you can review the proposed language. And of course, if others have other language that you would propose, bring it to that session. So it was just our best stab at getting some of the ideas and questions that have been brought forward from working with Mr. Kenny addressed. And then can you remind me of what your first question was? Apologies.
Wasn't a question, just I think we should put back on the list committee work plans. They need to, the purpose and how we do them needs to be reevaluated.
Yeah, so I will follow up again with the mayor and COO. CVP Forsyth and I had talked about this with them, and my understanding was that I think COO Files was going to address that, and that we were going to have standardization across all the different committee work plans and clarity for all the committee chairs on exactly whether it is a biennial work plan, in which case it would be 24-month long work plan, or whether it is a 12-month work plan that needs to be renewed twice within the biennium. So I'll circle back. I'll talk about it with council leadership and the mayor and COO, just so that all committee chairs can have clarity on that as we move into the adoption of those work plans. And for those who haven't brought those forward, if possible, yes, if you can bring those forward in the upcoming month through your committees, that would be great, so we can have all our work plans set. But I will email out as soon as I know the clarity on that. Thanks.
Councilmember Stewart. There you go.
My microphone is telling me it's time to stop talking for the evening. I'm so sorry. We can continue this conversation maybe, but I do, for instance, the question of whether or not to have 12-month work plans, it changes the scope of the work plans, and therefore maybe our approach, because for instance, this year is a year for which we already know the budget, next year's a year for which we do not know the budget, so it does change the level of detail at which those reports go into. So if we're bringing them forward this month, I'll go ahead and continue to bring mine forward in the current format. I think it's something that we can continue to revisit.
All right, I do not see other hands, and I do not see any other hands in the room as well. And thank you all for the great meeting tonight. Hearing no objection, we are adjourned.